6:33 p.m. Tuesday, April 6, 2021. I'll call Board of Selectmen meeting to order. This is a negotiation session with Strategic Lands Ventures regarding the Shingle Hill development, going into the last stages of negotiating a LIP agreement, a local initiative project agreement. So over the past few days, the applicants council and the town council have been going back and forth with proposed memorandum of understanding to try to refine that document to the point where we can get to a decision point. And we seem to be close as to being able to make that decision. And the objective is to get to a resolution on it tonight, one way or the other. There are some things that need to be discussed. And so I'll get right down to the basic points here. So overall, the agreement is triangular as we discussed. However, there is a sticking point that we need to resolve. And the basic point
Get out of the way.
So when you came to us initially, you came to us with a project that was 157 units, now currently reduced to 150 units. And it was recognized in our initial meetings that this represented a large project. And we had some initial discussions that in our first meeting on this in this negotiation. Now,
Okay. Sorry, Dave.
as such, the town has some advantages.
Thank you, Dave.
With respect to the zoning board negotiations to mitigate aspects of the project that are a concern to us. And we had some considerable concerns raised to us by residents over safety issues and environmental issues. And we deferred a lot of those to the zoning board negotiations, because we don't have enough information to really address those adequately in this session, as the information simply isn't available. So aspects related to stormwater runoff, etc., those are really the matters for the zoning board to deal with. And you're bringing a large project to us gives the zoning board the ability to address those. Now, that is okay with us. We'll give you the 150 units. The main point that we need here is if you remove item B under section 1, then I think that the board, based on feedback that board members have given to the town council, and town council has reviewed with me, that we have something that we could come to a vote on. So that is, I think, pretty much where we are. And I'll leave the decision on that up to you.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Jeff Engler from SLV School Street. You lost me there at the end relative to the board's conclusion relative to, what was item B relative to the town asserting that the large project is not consistent with local needs. What are you saying the town's position is as it relates to this agreement? Because I would offer one other thing. Whether the project is 150 units or 136 units, the zoning board has the same right to review all the same information that's irrelevant. I'm not sure the board understands the legal significance of asserting that it's a large project and inconsistent with local needs. That's basically giving the town an escape hatch when we're 95% of the way through the proceedings to say, yeah, the project is inconsistent with local needs, so we're denying it or we're conditioning it. That's inconsistent in my mind with what we spent the last 6 months on, which is trying to agree to a collaborative memorandum of understanding. And that was something that was never introduced in the MOU until Mr. Witten's last turn of the document. And that I can't live with that. So I don't know if you're saying the board is okay taking it out or what you're saying, but the way it's written provides the zoning board way too much legal latitude. And it's not worth it to me to do 150 units as if that's going to be the condition. So, you know, because then I wouldn't be a large project cap and I wouldn't be exposed to that local need assertion. So I can't have that language as it's written. I think I made that clear to Mr. Witten and to a lesser extent the board, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the board's position.
Well, the board's position is if you are willing to remove section 1B as and this is in the version that your attorney returned to us, the most recent one. If we simply remove that altogether, I believe that we can get to an agreement.
So why, Mr. Chairman, I feel ignorant here. Why wouldn't I agree with that? I mean, it was language that Mr. Witten introduced, not us. So now you're saying the board is okay taking it out. It wasn't our language to begin with, so we're comfortable with it being removed.
So the language was, I will agree with you, the language was introduced by Mr. Witten to make it clear to, in this document that you were bringing a large project, and if the language was overly strong, that's you know, one lawyer's opinion versus another. The return language shifted the direction of that considerably, and I think led to some confusion or concern on our part that the zoning board would be, you know, potentially stripped of authority, or that it would misconstrue the board's position here. So the board has said that it would support through a letter of endorsement. The objective is to get to the point where the board would support a letter of endorsement and would, you know, provide political support to the zoning board for the project overall as stated. But the current language that was in 1B was too intrusive into the zoning board's overall authority. So if we just take 1B out altogether, I think that's a reason. Is that I believe that's where we are. Is that your interpretation of Mr. Witten of the other board members' feedback to you?
So yes, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the board and Mr. Engler and members of the public. Mr. Chairman, it's 1B and 2B. Those are the two sections that address the same issue. And Mr. Chairman, if I could, maybe to answer Mr. Engler's question, I don't think the board's confused as to the law at all. Mr. Engler, your project as filed is a large project, and we've discussed that, and you've recognized that, otherwise you wouldn't have filed it. As a large project, the Board of Appeals will have the right, but not the obligation, to claim the safe harbor under the regulations as a large project. You're well aware of that, because otherwise you wouldn't have filed for a project at 157 units, which you know is a large project. So what the chair is saying is the Board of Selectmen, as a matter of law, cannot constrain the Board of Appeals, but the Board of Selectmen can provide the political support that you're seeking to the Board of Appeals. But at the end of the day, the Board of Appeals has the right to approve or condition or deny your project. And that is going to be up to you to demonstrate to the Board of Appeals why they should approve it as opposed to deny it. The agreement that you're trying to negotiate with the Board of Selectmen cannot strip the Board of Appeals of that authority, which is theirs under statute and regulation. The best you can get is that the Board of Selectmen will go to a Board of Appeals meetings or go to the Board of Appeals hearings and reiterate its support as evidenced by a memorandum of agreement. The Board of Appeals is an independent body and will have the right to adjudicate on this matter as the Board of Appeals does in every community. Being at 150 units, 157 as you applied, is a large project. If you didn't want to submit to the authority of the Safe Harbor large project provision, then you would have applied for a project below the Safe Harbor. You didn't. And you and I had this conversation in this public setting where you responded, you don't apply for a project for units that you don't want. In other words, you apply for what you need. And that's what you did.
Well,
the Board of Selectmen is offering you 150 units. And that 150 units, everybody knows on this call, is a large project. And that is what they're trying to get to, which is the agreement that it's a large project and then move into negotiated conditions. But I think the Board of Selectmen doesn't feel it can get to the next step until there's resolution between the board and you that this is a large project by definition, and there's no way to wordsmith away from that. It's a large project and the Board of Appeals will have its authority, and you take your chances. Having the support of the Board of Selectmen, having the Board of Selectmen's endorsement carries the weight that you have sought. DHCD will most likely issue a project eligibility letter in conjunction with that support. And then you go to the Board of Appeals and make your substantive case.
Mr. Whitten, respectfully, legally, you're correct. And we keep coming to the differentiation between legally and politically. And if you were my counsel, you would tell me I'm a crazy man to have spent all this time and money and file a project of 150 units and allow the Zoning Board of Appeals to assert safe harbor under large project, which then makes me vulnerable for the entirety of the Zoning Board of Appeals, because the Zoning Board, yes, has the legal right to deny or condition and have it be consistent with local needs. I'm not going forward with that, and we can have a quick meeting tonight if the board is emphatic on holding that position, and I'll file with 136 units, which will not be a large project cap, and I'll just go to mass housing. But that's exposure that I cannot live with. I just can't. So you tell me how we can address that issue, because I'm not going to go through 6 months of public hearings with the zoning board and have them assert or condition or deny and have it be consistent with local needs, which legally, to your point, they would have every right to do. I'm not going to do it. So how do we get out of this conundrum?
I can't answer that, Mr. Engler. You know the regulations, you know the law, and you're asking the Board of Selectmen to endorse a project that you're well aware of is a large project. The Board of Selectmen can do no better than to enter into a memorandum of agreement with you and show up at the ZBA meetings and say, we support this project as conditioned. But that's as far as it can go legally. Your counsel.
Well, here's what I need to do then, Mr. Whitten, and this is going to be written into the agreement. If I file for 150 units and the zoning board asserts, they don't have to assert, they do not have to assert safe harbor.
I said that.
Correct?
That's correct.
But if they do, I will withdraw my application and we're going to file for 136 units, and the terms of this agreement are going to, be voided, because that's what I have to do. So it's one or the other. It's one or the other, because I cannot go through 6 more months and have that kind of exposure. Of course, I knew it was a large project cap, but I also expected the Board of Selectmen, through their political what have you, that, or legally, I understand legally they cannot bind the zoning board. I get that. All right. But we could write something in that makes it pretty darn clear politically that the zoning board is not going to do that. And you're not comfortable doing that. The Board of Selectmen is not comfortable doing it. So I think we can, so we're either going to have language as I've suggested, or we can end this call in 10 minutes because I just can't do it. You have to understand the position I'm in. I can't go through 6 months of hearings and have the zoning board assert safe harbor that it's inconsistent with local needs. And I have no appeal rights. So there's not much to talk about. You understand that as a lawyer.
I can only respond, Mr. Engler, that this was your proposal. You're the one who came to the town of Manchester with this proposal. Manchester didn't reach out to you. And the board has invited your application for discussion. And now when the rubber meets the road, what we're hearing is that the application for 150 units could be denied by the Board of Appeals. That's always been the case. There is nothing the Board of Selectmen could legally do in a contract that could strip the ZBA of its authority. Forget the politics, that's the law. On the political side, I can't imagine any select board in the Commonwealth trying to strip a local Board of Appeals of its authority.
Well,
and of course, you knew that. So where we are is to try and shape an agreement so that you can negotiate with the Board of Selectmen to get their political support, but you have always run the risk of exposure with the Board of Appeals at 157.
Well, all right, well, I appreciate it. I think we can end this meeting early because I think we'll just go forward with the 136 units with mass housing and no mitigation, no sidewalk, none of the payments to the Affordable Housing Trust, because that's simply a risk I can't take. And I'm not getting the political cover that I had hoped from the Board of Selectmen. One of the only things that I'm getting through this LIP process is 2 things. One, the additional 14 units, which is not even more rentable square footage because I can do a 136 unit proposal and have it be the same size. And 2, a MassWorks collaborative grant application that would have benefit to me. Other than that, there's really no benefit for me doing a LIP other than trying to have some, political collaboration, which you and I guess the board is telling me is limited because I just can't go, John, I don't know how else to tell you. Yes, clearly I know this is a large project cap, but I also did not expect the zoning board to be able to assert safe harbor. And if they do that, we can do one of 2 things. We can either have me go to mass housing, or you and Jason Pitty can structure language that says if the town does assert safe harbor, I'm going to modify my application to 136 units, and maybe not all of the conditions, but some of them are going to go away. So I'm putting that out to the board and to you because that's where we're at.
So I guess just a question, Eli, if I might, to Mr. Whitten.
Yes, please.
So if that were to happen, Mr. Whitten, would that be starting over, or would that be a modification to an ongoing application? I'm a little confused about that. If he were to shift gears midstream.
So what I think I'm hearing Mr. Engler say is that if the ZBA asserts safe harbor, which would happen quickly, would happen within 15 days of the opening of the public hearing, what I think Mr. Engler is saying is if they do that, then the contract would say that the application could be revised to below the large project threshold. So let's say 136 units, and then it would proceed under a 136 application. The ZBA would lose its safe harbor claim. Of course, my quick response to that, to the Board of Selectmen, to the Select Board, is I'm not sure why you would do that, because it doesn't benefit the town at all to strip the ZBA of that safe harbor card. that would be analogous to kind of the traditional mass housing filing. So I don't, unless Mr. Engler wants to sweeten the deal for the Board of Selectmen, I don't see how that is an attractive option for the town.
Why would I sweeten the deal on a project that has 14 less units?
Well, because you wouldn't get the Mass Works grant, you wouldn't get.
And that's it. And I also wouldn't have millions of dollars of mitigation.
Mr. Engler, I can only say this, you came to the town of Manchester. And
all right, fine, fine. I think we can. I think we can conclude. Thank you, Mr. Whitten. I think we can conclude this meeting because we've spent 6 months on something that unfortunately, it's just not going to happen because I have too much legal risk. I can't go forward with the project before the zoning board with no assurances that the Board of Selectmen, I understand legally they cannot force the zoning board to not assert safe harbor. I get that. What I'm saying is politically, as an appointed board, that's what I was expecting to happen, that they would tell the zoning board, don't assert it. You're giving me no assurances in that regard. I simply can't go forward. My investors would not allow me. My counsel would not allow me. And it's a disappointing conclusion because I thought we would be able to tonight speak on the other conditions and probably reach an agreement. But basically you're giving the town an out to deny the entire project based on consistent with local needs and local concerns. And I can't do that. So I don't feel any kind of, I don't feel badly about making that decision because it's no attorney, John, this would allow me to go forward like that. And if you were my counsel, you wouldn't allow me to go forward like that, understanding the risk. So I'm not going to do it. So that's where we're at.
So let me say two things, Mr. Chairman, maybe to you, Mr. Engler. I think if you're terminating the conversation, it should be with the Board of Selectmen, not with me. So just as a courtesy to the full board, they're all here. They put a lot of time into this. Secondly, with regard to the political support, the draft agreements that we've been working on back and forth includes the political support you've asked for. And the chair said it again, that the political support is what the Board of Selectmen are talking to you about. So you're looking for more political support. You can talk to the board about that. What they cannot do is strip the Board of Appeals of their legal authority. If your argument is they can use their political persuasion, they can convince the ZBA, then that is something you negotiate with the Board of Selectmen or Select Board, and that's perfectly acceptable. But where the line stops is the ZBA's authority, which has not changed one iota since the day you filed for 157 units. So I'm not telling you anything new. I'm not saying anything you didn't already know. And we raised this the very first meeting. When I asked you, or a comment to the board, my experience with developers is they ask for 200 when they want 100. That is a traditional process. Everybody knows that. You said that's not what you do. And we take your word for it. So the Select Board is offering you almost exactly what you've asked for, 150.
No, they're not. I'll put it to the Board of Selectmen then. What's the likelihood that the zoning board is going to assert safe harbor? Or do I have, your commitment to speak to the zoning board formally or otherwise, understanding legally they can make their own decisions, but that if they assert safe harbor, that we don't have a deal because I can't go forward and waste more time and money and have them deny a project which I can't appeal. So I'm putting it to the board. What kind of political cover do I have from you with the Zoning Board of Appeals more than the 2 sentences in this agreement that Mr. Whitten has offered?
Well, we've said that we would provide a letter of endorsement for the project to the zoning board. And if it's necessary, a member of the Board of Selectmen certainly would be willing to go before the zoning board and argue the merits and the position of the Board of Selectmen regarding this project. As to your question of an estimation of what the zoning board will do, I will not hazard a guess. I tend to leave the zoning board as an independent organization. I do not interfere with their adjudications. So I really can't give you an answer, and I wouldn't want to commit to an opinion on what the zoning board will do in any given situation. I don't think that would be appropriate. I think it's important that they operate as an independent and objective entity as much as possible. So I would definitely be willing to go and speak for them regarding this application and this endorsement. I'd certainly commit to that.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, that if they don't take the Board of Selectmen's recommendation, then that leaves me in the same position. So the only choice we have is we amicably, go in different directions, or Mr. Whitten is receptive to the fact that we have the right, if the safe harbor is asserted, to modify the project to 136 units, which I can't imagine why the town would be unhappy about that. Okay, you're getting less units, which everybody seems to want anyway. And then the agreement, not all the mitigation will go away. And I'd have to think about, but it's obviously not as good a project as us, but it stays. We have a development agreement that there's a contingency, shall we say, for lack of a better word. And if the zoning board asserts safe harbor, which I agree with Councillor Whitten, they have the right to do, but if they do, then I need to have rights to modify my comp permit. I've worked on a million projects. We would not need to go through the whole LIP process again because it's a reduction in units. DHCD would have no issue with that. I would get a letter from them if the board insisted, but they would have no issue. And the agreement then between we and the town doesn't look entirely different, but it looks slightly different. So maybe that's the direction, but I can't go forward with no recourse on the board asserting 100 safe harbor. I can't do it. So I'm putting that to you and Councillor to, if there's a willingness, that's what we have. If Councillor's advising you not to do that and you take his guidance, then we'll just agree to go in different directions.
Well, as has been stated, you did come to us with a large project, and in some of our decision making, especially around safety, we felt that we were necessarily deferring some of those decisions to the Zoning Board of Appeals to manage. And these are issues.
You still are, Mr. Chairman. The zoning board will have all the same rights. Every right that they have on 150 units, they'll have on 136, other than the fact that they won't be able to assert safe harbor. That's it. All the same reviews, all the same environmental reviews, all the same stormwater reviews, all the same traffic reviews. There's no difference between the two applications other than that huge distinction where they cannot assert it's a large project and the 150 units is inconsistent with local needs. That's it.
No, they'll actually have considerably less authority to moderate the safety.
What is left? Councillor Whitten, what's the difference? What authority will they have that they don't have at 136?
The difference is huge, Mr. Engler. If the town has the safe harbor provision, if the Board of Appeals can impose the safe harbor protections, then the Board of Appeals can negotiate with you far beyond what the Board of Appeals can do if it is a mass housing project eligibility letter. You're aware of that.
Well, we're saying the same thing.
Well,
all right, well,
we are saying the same thing, and that's why when you came with 157 units, the perception was you were willing to submit to the Board of Appeals under the notion that the town of Manchester would be in safe harbor. Otherwise, why would you apply for 157 units?
Right, but the town is not in this neutered memorandum of understanding is not giving me the, kind of the assurances that I need. So we seem to be at an impasse here, and it's extremely disappointing to me. I mean, extremely. And I know it's disappointing to the board considering the amount of time and effort that they've spent on this. You know, we had our first meeting, I think, in July of last year. And, you know, I'm not going to say the entire thing was a waste, because I think there are things about the project that, you know, we've heard and improved upon, but and it's going to be worse for me, and it's going to be much, much worse for the town. So still be a great project, but the town could be, you know, in a much better place mitigation wise and all sorts of other things. But it doesn't seem like I understand what council is saying, but you basically want to negotiate and give me no leverage because I wouldn't be able to appeal. So the town would have all of the leverage on any condition the zoning board imposes. And no developer is going to go forward in that scenario. So I think we're, you know, unfortunately, we are where we are, and you know, we'll just go, you know, we'll both do what we need to do.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just not to argue with Mr. Engler, because that's not productive, but just to respond to that last comment. And I know you know this, Mr. Engler, but I think for the benefit of the 130 people on this call, it's worth stating that there are many communities in the Commonwealth that are consistent with local needs that can impose the safe harbor protection. Comprehensive permits are issued there all the time. I just did one for the town of Amherst. I did one in the city of Cambridge. So you know as well as anybody that having safe harbor doesn't mean the Board of Appeals will torture your project. It doesn't mean the Board of Appeals will deny your project. It means you have to prove your project without the benefit of having the Friendly Housing Appeals Committee over your shoulder. But that's how you applied for this project.
Mr. Whitten, I've done many 40Bs, all right, many for myself and other clients. And many people probably don't think I'm very smart, and they're probably right. But one thing I am good at is assessing the situation and the political climate and the amount of headwind. And most of the projects that you've talked about where towns have asserted or municipalities have asserted safe harbor, it's an entirely different set of circumstances than what I'm dealing with here. Entirely different. All right. And you understand that I know you do, because you frequently, well, fine, then you don't. But I'm just saying that under this set of circumstances, which I've come to fully understand over the last 12 months, I would not feel comfortable going forward under that scenario. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's plenty of opposition groups out there trying to do different things, and they would certainly go to all the zoning board of appeals hearings and encourage the zoning board of appeals to, you know, do things that I couldn't live with, and I would have no recourse in that situation. And in my experience, zoning boards of appeals, when they have all the leverage and they have a room full of 100 people or more saying don't do this, are going to agree with them. And I just can't go forward under that scenario. So I don't think we have too much more to talk about.
Well, if that's your position, if that's your final position, I think we'll have to accept that. It's been a difficult few months going through this process. I'm sorry we weren't able to reach an agreement here. I do appreciate you coming to us in the first place and offering us the opportunity, difficult as it has been. I understand if you need to go your separate way on this, that's your decision. And I hope there's no particular hard feelings. I know I spent a lot of time trying to reach compromises that would meet your needs and the town's needs. I think we've done the best that we can here.
Mr. Chairman, I sincerely appreciate your time and the board's time and Greg's time and counselors' time and members of the public that have participated. I do, and I think we're close, but I just, people that understand the law understand the position that the town has put in me in. And yes, I proposed the project, but I had proposed the project under a different set of political expectations. And I can't go forward with the project where the zoning board could say, all right, we'll do 50 units and I have no legal recourse. I mean, it would be crazy for me to do that. I mean, I've already spent a ridiculous amount of money on this thing, and to go forward and then have no, Mr. Whidden, I know, I mean, I listened in last night. He's advised the town on what the likelihood of success is if you have a hostile project and we have to appeal to the HAC. I mean, I'm sure he's advising you well, and he did last night, but what you're asking me to do, and I know the board is not directly, but, I guess shame on me for not fully understanding the town's position as it relates to a large project. Because why would I ever, it's not like I'm applying for 250 units or 136 units. We're talking about a 14 unit difference. All right, and we're not even talking about difference in square footage. I can do the same size building in 136 units as I can at 150. So the changes are modest relative to what the project would be like for the town, but the legal implications to me are gigantic, absolute catastrophic, and I don't think that's hyperbole. And I wish I had better news, or I wish there was something I could tell you that would make that all better. But counselors' seemingly unwillingness to allow the town to have some sort of, conditional agreement at 136 units, where we still have a lip and we still have conditions that I'm obligated to, but I'm allowed to go. Because let's look at it differently. If we don't reach an agreement, that's the position I'm going to be in anyway. So what does the town have to lose by doing that? That's the part I don't get, because you're going to be in the same legal position in either case. So I would ask the Board of Selectmen to ask counselor, what harm is there in doing that? Because you're going to be in the same position either way. So that's the part I don't get, is if the zoning board, you're making me powerless. I need to have some sort of recourse if the zoning board asserts 136 units, or safe harbor, excuse me, under the large project cap. And if counselor is advising you don't do it, that's fine. And he has, he's been through the wars and understands the process. But the Board of Selectmen should realize you're going to be in the same place whether you reach this lip agreement with me or not, because I'll just file a 136 unit project with Mass Housing. So I don't understand what the difference is, and I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, so first of all, correct one thing, one aspect of this here. This is the board's position on the large project and the status of the large project and the way we negotiated it is, yes, we were advised by town council, but this is 5 members of the Board of Selectmen navigating enormous number of inputs from residents regarding various different issues that the residents are concerned about, and picking and choosing which of those issues we address in our conditions and which we would be willing to leave to the zoning board based on presumptions and assumptions about how the project was brought to us, which was as a large project. So if it were different,
He's
if it
okay.
were otherwise, we would
No,
have
and you're good.
negotiated a number of
Perfect.
things.
Look, I've got all these lovely toys. You have more.
But that's not the way it is. So
All right.
I think that's where we are.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman, and the time of the board and everybody involved. I'm obviously very disappointed it's ended this way. But I mean, maybe I put myself in this position, maybe the town put me in this position, or more likely it's probably a little bit of both, but I just can't move forward under the set of conditions or expectations that's been communicated to me. So, with that said, I certainly appreciate the board's time, and I don't think this has to be the end of the communication or collaboration. I mean, I still have every intention of doing a superior project at this location, project that will benefit the town and benefit many of its residents who I anticipate are going to actually ultimately live there. We have every intention to do a first-class project that will, address many of the concerns that the board and its consultants to date have identified. We want to do something special, and I believe we can, and it'll be 136 units, not 150. So people should be happy about that, I suppose. But that's where we're at.
Well, I appreciate the consideration. Do any other board members have any comments they wish to make? All right. Well, it would seem that we have a short evening tonight.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the board. If the board changes its position, let me know, because it'll take me a few days to pull together the other application. I'm not closing the door. It sounds like that's not going to happen, but leaving it open. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Councilor Whitten and others involved, and we'll be in touch.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Evening, Mr. Engler.
Evening.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? Mr. Dietrich, I will open up the mic to you. One caution. You are, and you've heard me say this before, sir, you're an alternate on the zoning board. There is a possibility that you will be adjudicating this, even though it's going to come later. So you know how to consider this as you make your comments.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Yes, I'm fully aware of everything you just said and have said in the past, and I agree with you. My question is, I signed on a little bit too late tonight, and I was just wondering if before you close the meeting, if you would be kind enough just to kind of recap, so those of us who didn't get on board early enough know what happened. It looks like you have not been able to reach an agreement on a lip, but I don't know that. So if you would be kind enough to recap, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. I will recap it. So at the beginning of all of this, the developer came to us with a project that was 157 units, since reduced to 150 units. At the very first meeting, we talked to the developer about how that represented it being a large project, and a large project under state law gives the zoning board actually considerable authority with regard to the project. At the time, the developer expressed that the idea was the political support of the Board of Selectmen carry weight with the zoning board, which would be acceptable and beneficial to the developer in managing their way through the zoning board process. There was some unfinished discussion around potentially legal statements made about whether or not the board could by force restrict the zoning board. I think there was some disagreement there, but overall the discussions were around the Board of Selectmen providing political support at the zoning board level to allow to give the developer political cover, even though they're bringing a large project before the zoning board. And we proceeded in our negotiations with that as a basis. And then we fixed the number at 150 units later on in negotiations, partly to ensure that we would be at a point where we would, at the end of the project, if it went through, where we actually would have coverage from future 40B developments, and also to retain its status as a large project, because we valued the ability of the zoning board to moderate aspects of the project. And in particular, we deferred a number of concerns about safety, which we couldn't address at this level, not really, because we simply don't have the final designs of the project. And we knew that those concerns were paramount to a number of our residents. So we told our residents that the zoning board would be in a position to deal with those. So we got to the point where it was time to write the memorandum of understanding. And as I pointed out before, the devil is in the details when it comes down to actually writing the final language. And as we went through that process, it became difficult to manage language that the developer would accept with regard to constraints that the developer wanted the Board of Selectmen to try to impose on the zoning board. And ultimately we arrived at the meeting tonight, where the developer decided it was not reasonable for him to move forward with just the political cover from the Board of Selectmen in front of the zoning board with a large project, and he has withdrawn his application at this point. So that's where we are. Ashley.
Hi, thank you, Eli. Quick question. Will the town get notification of Mr. Engler's application if he so decides to pursue one with mass housing? Will we get notified of that? Because I understand that that triggers some sort of a 30-day period for opportunity for comment.
Mr. Whitten?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so in order to get a mass housing project eligibility letter or a project eligibility letter from any of the state agencies, which predominantly is mass housing, the municipality is entitled to a 30-day comment period. Typically, but not always, the municipality will ask for an extension. Sometimes mass housing will grant a 15-day extension, sometimes an additional 30 days, during which the select board with other town boards and the select board's consultants can file comments to mass housing, with mass housing, articulating concerns or support of a particular project. Whether mass housing incorporates any of those concerns is a different conversation, but yes, the town will receive notice, will have an opportunity to comment and submit those comments to mass housing for their consideration. As a general rule, the public can also submit comments to mass housing. Again, perhaps for another day, we could discuss whether or not those comments are listened to or the envelopes actually even opened, but that's a different conversation. So yes, the answer to Ms. Ochs' question is yes, the town will be notified, the town will have an opportunity to respond, and the public can respond as well.
Okay, thank you. So that 30-day period, does that open the instant he makes his application, or what is the typical time frame that they take before they open that period?
Yeah, excellent question. So post-COVID, it's taking longer. Generally speaking, when an applicant files with Mass Housing and pays the fee, that will generate the project eligibility comment period. So I would presume it's a matter of days as opposed to weeks, but we're really not sure. So I think my advice to the town would be anticipate within a week of Engler's submission of the application, receiving a letter from Mass Housing seeking public comments.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Cross.
I just want to thank all 5 selectmen and John Whitten as counsel and Greg for their tireless work on behalf of the town. I realize this has been an extraordinarily difficult process and that each of you have worked for good. And I hope and pray that this process will actually bring all people in town together despite the twists and turns to date. And just want to thank you so much for all that you have done. I know it's been hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Any other members? Ms. Hammond? No. Any other members of the public with any comments to make or questions? All right. Well, hopefully we can go back to a somewhat more regular meeting schedule. So I think then, Mr. Whitten, thank you very much for your time through the past months on this. Oh, I'm going to make one correction. Mr. Engler said that he had introduced this project back in July of last year. And that was not correct. I don't know why he said that. It's true that he mentioned the project to the town back in July, but he said that he was going to present it to the town in September or in October, and that is in fact when he did present it to the town. Anyway, these little details. Mr. Whitten, again, thank you for your time over these past months. We really appreciate your guidance. Thank you to the town staff who have helped us through all of this and to the residents who provided their input and comments, especially those who have provided us support, and a number of you have been particularly constructive in your feedback to us. Many of you, I think, have newly come to interact with municipality on municipal matters through this process, and that I really would encourage you to stay involved. This particular project was difficult and challenging. There are other projects that are not nearly so stressful and could definitely benefit from the horsepower that some residents have shown here. Anyway, it looks like there's one last question from Zoom RX. If you could identify yourself when you speak.
Hi, this is Gail. Gang. What will the Board of Selectmen do next on this?
Nothing. I'll clarify that. So there's nothing left for the Board of Selectmen to do on this, so far as I know. Eventually, the developer will presumably file through Mass Housing, and then the Board of Selectmen will have an opportunity to make comments on that. But my understanding of the arc of that process will bring it mostly through the zoning board at that point. Mr. Whitten, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Selectmen and other municipal boards have a role to play with applications to the Board of Appeals, an important role to play. But at the end of the day, the decision rests entirely with the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question. This is Marilyn Kobus.
Marilyn Kobus, yes.
Hi. Again, expressing gratitude to everyone. I appreciate the dialogue that's been happening. And my question is a bit like Gail's about moving forward. One of the great things that our town did when we had the master planning process going on is the way that there was a great forum for input and ideas and sharing, questions, concerns, creativity. So forth. And I just wonder, as we look at options for affordable housing in town, if, outside of the formality, let's say, and pressure of I don't know what the best vehicle would be, to have perhaps another dialogue or series of dialogue around the alternative proposals that are in place, or what other ideas might be out there for helping us to achieve our goal.
So with respect to the concept of affordable housing overall, I know that there's a citizens proposal for Powderhouse Hill that is already going to be given some support from the Affordable Housing Trust. I imagine that project will, at some point, some aspect of that will be coming before the Board of Selectmen, although I'm not going to go into not planning on going into details on that, since this meeting is around the 40B negotiations and not that project. In the future, the Affordable Housing Trust and the town overall, the town, with the support of the voters, put together the Affordable Housing Trust to attempt to develop affordable housing within town. It is my hope that we can accelerate the process of attempting to build actual affordable housing in town, and I would strongly urge groups to interact with the Affordable Housing Trust. They've already spent a considerable period of time looking at different options. It has always been a slow process and a challenging process. And that process is not going to end, it's going to continue. And the Affordable Housing Trust is the vehicle that the town is, with the support of the voters and support of the voters on a regular basis at town meeting, because we do move money from the CPC affordable housing stock into, or affordable housing budget into the Affordable Housing Trust. This is the avenue that the town is going to continue to pursue for supporting affordable housing. And we hope that people will engage with that group. I think it can be a very productive, cooperative, and effective means of achieving shared and common goals, and especially a goal that I think this entire episode has put a big spotlight on.
Thank you for
Mellish, same comment as I made to Jim Dietrich. You're well aware, since you're the chair of the zoning board, that you will eventually be adjudicating. So
yes, I'm speaking with respect to the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. And the challenge we've had is locating properties which can be de-restricted to provide affordable housing. So the extent to which the residents can help us come forward with those properties would be much appreciated. We don't have a whole lot of land to develop on, so we need help from the townspeople to to identify the properties. Thanks.
Any other questions from members of the public? All right. And I think at this point, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Eli, before we do that, may I make a comment?
Sure.
I would like to personally thank both you and Greg for the tireless work you both have put into this. And as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I feel very fortunate that we had you at the helm. You handled it. Many difficult situations fairly, thoughtfully, and thoroughly. Greg, you must have 2 or 3 clones. You have to. But anyway, I just thank you both and all the support staff, Sonia, who put so much time into this. The town is so fortunate to have you both. And the townspeople who've had the benefit of a very transparent process, however painful it was. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone who has so patiently followed us through this process, and I hope we can have a much better time getting together in the future.
Hear, hear.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes, please.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Thankfully, yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Good night, folks.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.